All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the MiFOOD Workstream 2 Configuration Workshop. The theme of the workshop is Migrant Precarity and Urban Food in the Global South. My name is Zhenzhong Si. I'm the Project Research Manager of the MiFOOD Network. I will be your host today, and welcome. For those of you who are not familiar with the MiFOOD Network, the Migration and Food Security project aims to design and implement a new and innovative global research and knowledge mobilization agenda focused on the interactions between migration and food security within the Global South. The project is funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council in Canada. It is being implemented by the Hungry Cities Partnership, or HCP, a research collaboration between over 100 researchers and partner organizations in 13 countries. You could check out our website, the newly launched website, mifood.org, to get more information. This workshop is brought together jointly by the MiFOOD Network and the International Migration Research Center, IMRC, at Wilfrid Laurier University here in Canada. And I would like to thank IMRC for their long-term support of the project. Now, I'd like to give you a quick some information about the background of this workshop. The whole MiFOOD project examines 5 research themes pertaining to migration, food insecurity, and precarity. We call these 5 themes work streams. So for each of the work streams, we call for proposals among our MiFOOD partners. So today I won't spend too much time talking about the details of these work streams here, as you can find them on the MiFOOD website. Workstream 1 have successfully supported 21 research projects about food insecurity amongst migrants in migration destinations. And today's workshop marks the beginning of Workstream 2 implementation, focusing on the role of migrants and refugees in transforming urban food chains. So Workstream 2 of MiFOOD, we've found 13 research projects. Today, the workshop aims to discuss research rationale and plans of 11 Workstream 2 projects. And researchers will engage in comprehensive exploration of the interplay between migration, informality, gender, and food security. To our participants, I'd like to say that your perspectives and inquiries are crucial to broadening our understanding of the theme. And as we navigate today's program, I would encourage everyone to engage fully, share your thoughts, ask questions, and connect with fellow participants. We will have all speakers finish their presentations, and we'll have 20 minutes after all the presentations for discussion, the first panel. Please feel free to post your questions and comments in chat or question and answer Q&A. To all the speakers, each of you will have 10 minutes to present, and please stick to your time. The chair will monitor the time, and we will have to cut you off if you go beyond that because of the tight schedule. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the first speaker. This is Professor Irudaya Rajan from the International Institute of Migration and Development in Kerala, India. Professor Rajan, I'll turn to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Sengkang, for the introduction, and also Professor Jonathan Kress for allowing us to have the project in the second phase of the study, because we have done a study in the first phase, and we are completing the report, and we are also publishing a paper in the special issue on global food security. So this is our second project, which we are going to work on that with this MiFOOD partners. And we are also one of the partners in India taking up studies on this issue. Now, I am going to speak probably for, I already said only 10 minutes, so I'll also keep my 10 minutes under control. So this study is basically going to focus on food security, or you call them food insecurity, among returned migrants from the recently completed Kerala Migrant Survey 2023, fully funded by the Kerala government. I think this is something very, very important. This study, what we are planning to do, will directly get into the policy making of the Kerala government. Now, if you look at the background of this, every year from India, 2.5 million or 25 lakhs Indians are migrating overseas, with the highest annual number of migrants in the world. And most of the India's migrants are working in the Gulf. We call them, South Asia Gulf Migration Corridor. There were studies done on South Asia by, myself along with Jinu Sakaria at IMRC. We have clearly brought out a link between South Asia and Gulf migration. And when people go to Gulf, not like coming to Canada or Australia, they have to return back. So return migration is a great topic, which is currently being implemented in the government. And also, after the COVID-19, return migration becoming a very important topic in the origin countries to plan policies and programs for them. Now, the objective of this new project, which you are proposing with this MiFOOD, is that does migrant lead better food security and related outcomes for the migrant sending communities in the global south? We are not only looking at the return migrant food security, but also looking at their families currently who are in Kerala. And is food security is a driver or consequences of international migration? Is it because they are not able to manage their own income in the origin country they are migrating? And then we can also look at what evidence-based intervention we can talk about in the country of destination on the mitigating food insecurity. These are the three important questions we are going to discuss in our project. And this study is basically, as I said in the beginning, this is part of the larger survey we conducted in Kerala through stratified random sampling with the 20,000 households throughout the Kerala. And we have located close to 3,000 returned migrants in our sample right now. And we will be taking what we call them the special study on those returned migrants who are readily willing to allow us to visit them again and take up this survey. And we will follow the questionnaire which we canvassed earlier with some modification, which is currently being, what is called, we already done pre-testing, but the ethical clearance is done by the Wilfred Laurier University. And this is our sub-sample which we are planning right now. We are trying to focus on return immigrants, but of course, some of you sitting here who are attending, if you wanted us to focus even return internal migrants, we can also look at it. But right now, we are planning to focus on return immigrants distributed throughout Kerala. You can look at it. We have 14 districts. So we distributed the 2,000 return migrants, which we are going to do a special study throughout Kerala. We can also map it up and we can see is there any relation to religion or which country they go. Like we can do migration corridor studies like Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. We can look at it, which country people had more problem compared to which country. We can also do some type of special analysis on the countries of destination. And these are the themes we are going to look at it in our study, global pandemic on food security among return migrants, because as per our earlier study on return migration done in Kerala, many people were not paid salaries. And there was a huge wage theft happened in the Gulf. They were not paid salaries. They were not paid proper salaries. There was a cut in their salaries. So what would have happened to their food? And also for them in the Gulf countries, and then their families left behind in Kerala. So we look at household consumption expenditure. We'll discuss about household provisioning. We have sections on this questionnaire. Food price changes. The food price was changing during the COVID-19 and also within the country. And we are also going to run the household food insecurity as a scale indicator and living poverty index. I think these are the special, themes in our questionnaire we are developing for this study. And what are the major expected outcome? This will be a new scholarly works and a better comprehensive about the linkage between migration and food security in the global south. Yeah, this is basically between South Asia and Gulf countries, basically looking at Kerala and Gulf migration corridor. Better understanding about food insecurity, vulnerability among migrants, so that we can also talk to the the sending countries and also the receiving countries like Gulf through the the Abu Dhabi dialogue and the Colombo process. We can also give some advice for the countries of destination how to provide food security for the migrants, and also better perspective on new forms of migration, informality, precarious migrant employment, and food insecurity. What are the employment prospects? Some people, as per earlier understanding, some countries, they don't pay them food money separately. The food is included in their salary sometimes. Some places they give them food and shelter separately. And whatever food they give, they have to eat the food. Some places they don't give food, but then they give them special money for that. And especially women who are working as a domestic worker, they eat whatever food left in the household. They cannot go out and eat. So I think we are looking at different corridor between men and women. And this is my final slide. Also, we want to give the research capacity for the young people who are working in the IMRC to understand this subject, so that they also do research on this return migration in the future. I'll stop here, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rajan, for that very informative and very concise presentation. We will hand over to our next speaker, Dr. Sujata Ramachandran from the Balsillie School of International Affairs. Sujata, over to you.
Thanks, Chinjong. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so the title of my post presentation and my proposed research project is Little Pockets of Joy and Happiness, Momo Enterprises and Nepali Migrants in New Delhi, India. So as the image on the slide shows, momos is the generic name that is given to fried and steamed dumplings. This term is used in India and also in some neighboring countries, including Nepal. This food originated in China, but modified versions of dumplings have appeared in a number of countries, including both Nepal and India. And in both these countries, they have been modified to suit local palates and preferences, especially in terms of the kind of ingredients that are used for fillings, the use of additional spices, and the different ways that momos are prepared. According to Zomato, and Zomato is India's top online and app-based food ordering and delivery service, essentially the equivalent of Uber Eats for Canada and the US, Indians placed more than 10 million orders for momos in 2021 alone. And this demand for momos was higher than that for several other traditional foods that are really familiar to Indian consumers. So clearly, momos are a very popular food item in many parts of India. They're also a very popular street food in cities, including the capital city of Delhi. And there are a diverse variety of outlets that sell momos, ranging all the way from street vendors, informal and formal market stalls, food shops, to small and large restaurants. And food bloggers and food-focused commentaries have constantly or repeatedly described momos as little pockets of joy and little pockets of happiness. And I have included one such quote on this slide, which reads, "Long ago in a land unknown, someone came up with the genius gastronomical idea of getting delicious pockets of happiness to India. Momos quickly became the unofficial street food of the nation. Any Indian will swear by momos. We could have momos 24/7, all days of the year, because they are now an inseparable part of our cuisine." So my proposed project will examine the role of Nepali migrants in the informal small and medium enterprises that sell momos in New Delhi, as well as their role in the informal production and wholesale distribution of momos across the city. And I have termed these processes as the Momo entrepreneurial economy. Just a little bit about the Nepali migrants. They're the second largest international migrant community in India. And migration to India is a rite of passage. It is a very common livelihood strategy for poor rural households in Nepal. The border between India and Nepal is open. It allows free movement across it without the need for passport and visas. And this happens under the terms of a friendship treaty that was signed between the two countries as far back as 1950. Nepali migrants are actively involved in food work in Indian cities as domestic workers in private households, also as operators, cooks, and helpers in food stalls and small and large restaurants. And as I said previously, they're also actively involved in the production and the informal production and wholesale distribution of momos to various food outlets in Delhi. And that's something that I'm going to look at as well. So in terms of the conceptual framework, I am going to look at some themes that broadly address the linkages between food, migration, and migrants. The first element, which ties to the broad theme of this workshop, is I'm going to address the migration food security nexus by examining how food insecurity features as an aspect of migration intentions and migrant precarity for Nepali migrants in New Delhi. Second, as is obvious, I'm going to examine the role of Nepali migrants in the local informal foodscapes of food environments in New Delhi. And I'm looking here specifically at the production and sale of one particular food. The third aspect is on migrant foodways. So migrant foodways are socio-cultural, political, and economic practices, beliefs, and institutions that include the production, distribution, and consumption of food tied to the arrival and settlement of migrant communities in receiving country settings. And here, what I'm trying to emphasize is that food is linked to the social and economic relationships between migrant communities and their host societies. And they're also connected to power relationships between the two groups. Another core aspect of my proposed project is to examine how migrant foodways feature in xenophobia or anti-migrant prejudice. So this has been characterized as gastro-racism or food neophobia, which simply is referring to an aversion to certain types of foods that are associated with migrant communities that are deemed to be unfamiliar, undesirable, or deemed to be foreign foods. And this aspect builds on my previous research on xenophobia, much of which was done with Jonathan, with Professor Crush. So while momos are a very popular food item and a very popular street food in many parts of India, not everyone supports their sale and consumption. There was a recent campaign to ban their production and sale. As this quote here suggests, it describes momos as a killer food, addictive food, which is damaging to the health of Indian children, especially teenagers. So my final slide, which discusses the research methods that I plan to use. It's a small study. I plan to use qualitative research methods, engage in purposive sampling to identify my participants. I will be undertaking about 30 in-depth semi-structured interviews with Nepali migrants who sell momos, produce and distribute momos in different parts of Delhi. And I'll also engage in participant observation in some marketplaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujata. It's a very interesting project examining the relationship between migrants and local population through food. Let's look forward to more research findings from that project. Our third speaker is Professor Huiguang Chen from Nanjing Agricultural University in China. Huiguang, over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. My presentation title is Understanding the Reciprocal Links Between Migration and Food Security in Nanjing and the nearby Changzhou City, China. The presentation include five parts. The part one is research background. Part two, research objectives. Part three, key issues to be solved. Part four, implementation plan. And part five, research method. The first part, research background. From the world's perspective, green is a strategic resource which directly affects human nutrition and health, especially the migrants. The Global Food Crisis Report of 2023 highlights the aggravation of the global food crisis. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic and the global regional turmoil. As for China, a bigger under the frame a bigger food concept. The internal migrants meet their basic food consumption needs and quantity security with diversified, high quality and nutrition dietary preference. The Part 2 research objectives. One, the first purpose is exploring the migration and the food security to conduct a comprehensive exploration of the interdependent relationship between migration and the food security in cities of Nanjing and Changzhou. The second purpose is analyzing the different impact to focus on the subdivision research of this subgroup, distinguish and analyze the different impact on food security by rural to urban and urban to urban migration direction. The third purpose is the recognition of household food security to generate new knowledge based on this investigation to enhance the recognition of the importance of household food security for migrants. Part 3, key issues to be solved. The core of key issues is to analyze the food access, nutritional intake, and food safety cognition level and their influencing factors among the migrants. And to further make a comparative and heterogeneity analysis from the flow direction, rural to urban and urban to urban migrants, and urban scale, regional central city Nanjing, and prefecture level city Changzhou. The first key issue is to examine the basic situation and their influence factors on food access and nutritional intake among rural to urban and urban to urban migrants. The first issue is to analyze the cognition level on food safety involving multiple dimensions and the differences by the rural to urban and urban to urban migrant samples. The third issue is to focus on the different impacts of income, job opportunities, food consumption, expenditure, and safety cognition on the rural to urban and urban to urban migrant before and after the COVID-19 pandemic. The fourth part is the implementation plan. First step is systematic review. One or two experts in the food safety field and 2 or 3 local government supervision department officials, such as the State Food and Drug Administration, objectives of consultation, engagement strategies. First, the second step is the draft guideline. Presents a set of structured or semi-structured questions or topic that will be discussed during the consultation. The third step is engagement and describes the research methods and techniques to be used during the consultation, such as interview, surveys. The fourth step is interview meeting, face-to-face consensus meeting in which we will be present the survey, included each candidate item. The last step is the survey. Survey or online survey will with external stakeholders to obtain multi-stakeholder feedback on handbook items for multi-stakeholder engagement. The fifth part, research method. The project adopt quantitative and qualitative research method. Quantitative analysis is the main method for the success of this project. Questionnaires, the first questionnaire survey. About the questionnaire survey data collection is about 500 sample questionnaires, including 300 in Nanjing and 100 in Changzhou, according to the proportion of floating population and not less than 30 interviews. The second quantitative method is analytical model used, such as SURE, PSM, and OBM. The qualitative analysis is an important supplementary way to quantitative research. For qualitative method, the quantitative interview with migrant and a few local government official and participant observation will be employed to complement the quantitative findings. In addition, questionnaire, survey, and the interview can be conducted at the same time. The sample questionnaire was conducted in a large-scale way in the form of electronic questionnaire and was conducted in batches by combining team members and recruiting 20 to 30 volunteers. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Guiguang, for the very solid research plan. An interesting research topic. I believe we can generate some interesting findings by comparing with our survey in Nanjing in 2015. I will be very much looking forward to that. Our last speaker for the first session is Caiyang Zhong. Professor Caiyang Zhong is from Nanjing University in China. Before we start, I just want to quickly remind people that if you have any questions or comments, please post in chat or the Q&A. Caiyang, over to you.
Okay, I'm here. Wait a moment. Okay. Everyone, I'm Caiyang from Nanjing University. My presentation topic is the role of migrants in urban food retailing. Migrants have extensively involved in urban food system, include production, processing, and retailing, wholesaling, and so on. And first of all, there are many migrant farmers in Nanjing City. And migrants have extensive involved in the production of fresh food and vegetable in Nanjing. For example, I have visited a township where about 57% of farmland was being cultivated by migrants. And also, migrants have been dominating the fresh produce wholesaling in Nanjing, and the biggest wholesale market is named Zhongcai Wholesale Market, which is the biggest wholesale market of the non-grain food at Nanjing, hosts more than 4,000 wholesale merchants, supplying over 70% of food consumed by Nanjing residents. And also, migrants play a vital role in fresh food retailing. And migrants account for about 65% of vendors in wet market. And the wet market is the most important food retailing outlet in Nanjing or in China. And the last but not the least, it is a report that there are around 20,000 takeaway riders in Nanjing. They delivering cooked food, delivering fresh food, and delivering medicine. And they can deliver all through the day and the night. And so why we intend to focus on vendors and takeaway riders. I think we have 4 reasons for focusing on vendors and riders. The first reason is their important role. Both vendors and takeaway riders are playing a crucial role in food retailing. More than 90% of households are buying food from wet market where vendors work. And about 35% of households using the delivery service provided by takeaway rider in Nanjing. The second reason is both their law and their food security are under studied. And the third reason is regarding the informality. That means food vending and delivery in China are quasi-formal rather than purely informal. The last region is a budget subject. The budget is enough includes the kind of migrants in studies. And so what's the object under these questions? We aim to investigate the following 5 questions. Firstly, we intend to analyze the characteristic of these migrant work into sectors, employing a comparative perspective to understand whether there is any difference in working time, for the buying source, and income between migrants and non-migrants. And moreover, we also intend to expand our survey coverage from urban area to both urban area and market town. Assess the status of migrant food vendor both in urban wheat market and country market or market towns. Secondly, we are in a study how the migrant food vending business contribute to boosting urban food security from the aspect including boosting time access and physical access to food, and food and dietary diversity, and encouraging food affordability. Thirdly, we also intend to examine the impact of migration on ensuring migrants of food security. That is to say, we will collect data on individual food consumption and assess the state of food security of food vendors and takeaway leaders and their coping strategy to deal with food insecurity. We also plan to collect the information on cooking facility and canteen in wet market to assess the impact of market amenity on vendors food security. And fourth, we plan to study whether and how migrant food vendors or wet market are affected by online food purchase. We will collect that information or pick up site or online to offline food selling along the wet market to be surveyed. And we will ask the question whether the vendors extend their service to provide takeaway business, improve their storing facility. That means we will invest the relationship between business relation between the food vendor in wet market and the takeaway leaders. Last, we will invest how gender shaped business practice of the wet market vendor and delivery drivers, and how male and female vendor cooperate in operating food vending business. So there are currently around 420 wet market in Nanjing. So we plan to use 5 steps to conduct service on vendors. The first step is to update the information on wet market in Nanjing, comparing the list of wet market. And the second step is to sample out wet market to be surveyed. We plan to select around 40 wet market. And the third step is conduct first visit to the selected wet market and join the layout of a food store or food shop within wet market. The other one is a finished map or layout of food store in a wet market. And the first step is sample the food store. And the last is to carry out a second visit and conduct questionnaire survey. And the next we aware that we face the challenge to interview a takeaway leader. There are 2 challenges. The first challenge is place challenge. We have no information of a spatial distribution of takeaway rider. And the second challenge is a time challenge. The takeaway rider are moving, and it's a pressure to be interviewed in part-time and rather than whole day. So we plan use 4 steps to conduct a survey on takeaway rider. The first step is we will select a survey set based on the household food security survey conducted in 2022 and 2023. We will assemble 20 community out of about 100 community where we conduct the household food security survey. And the secondary, we will visit the 20 community and count how many riders appear during the 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. This time, most riders are waiting for a delivery order with a state or list. The third step is distribute 200 sample to the select 20 set. And the fourth step is to conduct a questionnaire survey. And we will also conduct the data of takeaway rider survey and household food survey, and use the connected data set to investigate reciprocal relationship. And this is my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Taiyang. This is a very comprehensive research covering so many different themes, given the very limited funding. Thank you for the overview. Now we have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A and a discussion. So please type your questions in chat or Q&A. So the first question is from Sujata for Dr. Rajan. So it's about the survey conducted in Kerala. Since you have a long record of conducting Kerala migration surveys, did your previous surveys contain a module on food security for comparison purpose with the latest survey?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no. So this is probably the first time we are doing this module on food security. I think this is going to open up some new results, and never in the earlier round. This is the 9th round of Kerala migration survey, but this is the round we thought of picking up special survey on the food security module.
Mm-hmm. So we learned that you have conducted various kind of large scale surveys before, and I wonder if you could share your experiences or lessons learned for conducting large scale surveys in cities with our other participants.
No, because I am fond of large scale migration surveys, which is what there is some fascination for me. So I have not done. Not just in Kerala, I have done in another 8 states in the country now, big surveys. But the latest survey we have done basically what we call them stratified random sampling to estimate migration. I think the motivation to estimate migration and to estimate international migration, we need a larger sample. I think that lead us to, think larger sample. That's why this time, first time, normally we used to do 15,000 household survey. This time we have enhanced to 20,000 household were randomly selected throughout Kerala out of 8 million houses. And then, of course, when we go there, there are some houses are locked. Some household will say we don't want to be part of that. So we have rejected, or the household was locked, something close to 5,000 household. And we have to redesign the sampling. In the sense we have to change the sample household, and then we have done the survey. And the survey will provide estimates. The report will come out in another 2 to 3 months from now. So we'll have a big report. And there we are estimating returned migrants to Kerala who worked in the Gulf. And the estimate likely to be more than 1.2 million. So, but then based on the data, we are likely to have close to 3,500 returned migrants living in close to 3,000 houses. There are households with 2 returned migrants. Somebody might have come from Qatar. Somebody might have come from Saudi Arabia. So we are going to approach all of them. I don't know how many will support us to do the next module, but we are expecting at least we will be able to do 2,000 special module on this food security and run the survey throughout Kerala and produce a report, probably which will be interesting to other, because what we do in Kerala might be applicable to Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal. All these countries have the similar migration trends.
Thank you, Rajan. That's some very impressive number of surveys that we're going to conduct. Very much looking forward to that. And a question for Sujata. So you mentioned about migrants participating in the Momo's production and retailing sector. So I wonder how those contribute to the community building and among these migrants and shapes their cultural identities in that very racially sensitive environment. Could you please elaborate on that? I know you haven't conducted the research yet, but I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I cannot fully answer that question because I haven't done the research yet. But interestingly, Nepali migrants are not seen as outsiders or unwelcome migrants. They have the right, they practice the right religion. They are mostly Hindus. And as I pointed out, the border between India and Nepal is actually open. It allows them to enter India freely and live in India. So the xenophobia that's directed towards Nepali migrants is significantly less compared to other groups such as Bangladeshis. The fact that they are not treated as threats, to what extent does it play out in their participation? I really don't know. I mean, the fact that they have transitioned from selling momos as vendors in small stalls to the wholesale production and distribution. This is all informal production and distribution in certain parts of Delhi where such economic activities can be conducted, such as Chirag Delhi, which has a designation of an urban village, certainly shows that they are able to successfully conduct these activities. The aversion to momos is really not because they are Nepali foods. Actually, that resentment or that classification is against what are labeled as Chinese foods. But here again, they are labeling them as foreign foods that don't belong in India, and therefore their consumption and sale must be restricted. So I think that tension and that contradiction also is something that I hope to explore further in my research. Yeah,
yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for that. So let's see if we have more questions. I think someone in the audience wants to raise a question, Kazi. But let's wait and see if he posts a question in Q&A. So a question for Taiyang. So I see that you mentioned qualitative interviews. I think this is something we haven't done much before in Nanjing. Could you talk a little bit about the kind of questions you are going to ask for those interviews?
I think I will do some qualitative interview and answer some questions such as how get how do I say design some questions to ask them how the value added value distributed along the different different loops of the food supply. Food supply, for example, how they could get more value part from the wholesale to the consumer. How they get more benefit from the food supply chain, and other some question how they cut what's their strategy to cut the cost of business operation, and for example cut out operating or other models. I think that's my current thinking.
Thank you, Taiyang. Hui Guang, So before I ask you a question, so we have a comment from Professor Qazi Farid from the Department of Rural Sociology, Bangladesh Agriculture University. So he said he's currently, sorry, is that he? Is currently conducting a research on migration and food insecurity linkage. So his comment is to Professor Hui Guang and Tai Yang that you may consider examining the relationship in your research, the relationship between migration and food security, food insecurity. That is a key theme of the MiFOOD project. Thank you, Kazi. So we have also one final question because of the time limits for Hui Guang. So you mentioned about both rural urban and urban migrants in Nanjing and Changzhou. So how are they different in terms of food access when you think about rural urban and urban migrants?
Urban to urban migrants and rural to urban migrants are the proposals research objectives. We choose the two migrants. The two types of migrants, three reasons. The first, the rural to urban migrants, urban to urban migrants, they are different in educated level. Urban to urban migrants, the educated level of urban to urban migrants is higher than rural to urban migrants. This is the first reason we choose. The second reason lies in their different living conditions and living environment. Because of Chinese hukou system, urban to urban migrants, they lived in urban, so they are familiar with food access than rural to urban migrants. This is the second reason. The third reason, I think they are different in social capital. Social capital is combined with the second, the first reason, educated level. The second reason, living conditions or living environment. There, urban to urban migrants' social capital is higher than rural to urban migrants. So, urban to urban migrants have more capacity to guarantee food safety than rural to urban migrants.
Thank you. Thank you, people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will find more details, I believe, from the interview and the survey. We do have actually two questions in the Q&A from Stella Michalisa. So the first question is, for Taiyang, how long will the interview for writers be, since they may not have much time?
Because I didn't design the questionnaire, so I expected to complete the question survey within half hours.
Half hours.
Half hours. If I think half hours and pay the takeaway riders about 30 yuan Chinese yuan as a compensation for their time takeaway.
Yeah, we'll figure out whether it will work, right? So
I think let's we'll work. And because we want to pick the time of most rider most riders have a time for list. So we use the list time list time to conduct a questionnaire and give money as a compensation. I think it's reasonable and feasible.
yeah. Thank you, Taiyang. So question for Hui Guang. So what other cities will be involved in the study for the urban migrants? So I guess the question is about these urban migrants. Where are they from? Basically, all the other cities in China, or do you focus on one particular region or few cities?
Urban to urban migrant. The orange list is Midwest areas. For example, Henan province, Shanxi province, Sichuan province.
All right, thank you. So I guess we are almost on time, and so we'll hand over to Dr. Sujata Ramachandran for panel 2. And Sujata, over to you.
Welcome to this next session, which focuses on Latin America. If you're just joining the workshop, then please use the chat and Q&A function to ask your questions to the presenters. The Q&A will take place after the 2 presentations. I think maybe we can move on to the second presentation. So the second presentation is by Maria Mercedes, who's based at the Balsillie School with us, our colleague. And over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sujata. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can start presenting. You see the title of my presentation there is beyond the title of the project, really of the project proposal that we're working on, is Beyond Informality, Migrants in the Popular Food Economy in Quito. And this is a project that we have developed together with the Dr. Yolanda Alfaro at the Universidad San Francisco de Quito, which is our partner institution in Ecuador. So a little bit about the background and the context of our research. In the last 20 years, and particularly during the 2010s, Ecuador has received a growing immigrant population, most of them from within Latin American countries. Currently, the largest immigrant group in Ecuador is that of Venezuelans. Around 2.5% of the nearly 70 million people living in Ecuador are immigrants, of which 54.5% are Venezuelans and 23% Colombians. Quito is Ecuador's capital and is the second most populated city in the country, where about 2.5% of the population corresponds to international migrants. At the same time, the city is historically a recipient of internal migration. Quito's food system is dynamic and heterogeneous, with coexisting traditional markets, modern supermarket chains, and alternative food circuits. Most of the city's economically active population is employed in the informal sector. A recent study shows that 65% of the city's informal traders are Ecuadorians, while a significant 35% are migrants. From a general scope, the literature focusing on the nexus between migration and food systems in urban contexts has revealed that this nexus is multifaceted, looking at migrants not only as consumers within food chains, but also as actors involved in the processes of food production, circulation, and consumption. In the case of Quito, the historical links between internal migration and food systems has been well documented. Migrants from adjacent communities in the countryside have played key roles in the city's food dynamics from colonial times to the present. It is also known that these migrants integrate into the urban markets, into the urban economy, for informal work. And the existing research shows that for migrants from the countryside, the city's open-air markets, municipal markets, and street vending systems have provided not only income, but most importantly, opportunities for social integration via informal social and economic networks around the city's food market. Most international migrants arriving in Quito earn their income from informal work due to, on one hand, the structural composition of the country's labor market, and on the other hand, the generalized lack of formal migratory status from migrants. However, beyond the knowledge that most immigrants in the country earn their incomes from informal jobs, we do not know in greater depth how this insertion occurs in different areas of the informal economy. We are interested in studying these dynamics in the food sector, considering that its social organization has historically relied in the incorporation of internal migrants from migrant workers, while making it possible for them to form social, symbolic, and identity connections to the city. The literature in this respect has studied markets and informal vending beyond a strict economic point of view, conceptually moving from the concept of informal work to the concept of popular economies. So drawing on a broad notion of informality, conceptually linked to the category of the popular, this study aims to examine the case of Quito to understand how international migrants are inserted in the informal food market. We're interested in establishing a dialogue with the popular economies approach to interrogate to what extent existing networks established around food commerce are open to migrants and in what conditions. Considering a general context of xenophobia and exclusion that has surrounded the settlement of migrants in Ecuador, particularly those belonging to large migrant communities and racialized in relation to their origins in global south countries, our specific objectives with this project are first to understand the role of migration status in the insertion of international migrants in the informal and popular food market in Quito, and second, to understand what kind of social relationships are formed between international migrants and the social networks of vendors previously established in the popular food market in Quito. Overall, our contribution is to a better understanding of the integration to the city and belonging from migrants, but also from other sectors of society in context of precarity. This research, so we're planning regarding the methodology. This is an ethnographic case study. We have chosen two significant sites for fieldwork. One is a traditional popular market located in one of the city's main districts, so Carapungo, that you can see there in the map. This is it's a site of a traditional market that is characterized by the presence of internal migrants that have consolidated networks of traders for several decades, as well as this site also has a high concentration of internal migrants residing in the surrounding areas. While Tumbaco, which is the selected peri-urban sector, corresponds to a former rural zone that has gone through a rapid urbanization process, recent gentrification dynamics, and the arrival of international migrants as a dispersal strategy, given the saturation of labor markets in other areas of the city. Regarding more details on our field work, we plan to conduct participant observation for 3 to 4 weeks and between 40 and 50 interviews that will allow us to explore the different views that individuals, groups, and relevant institutions or organizations have on the informal and popular food market in Quito and the role of migration in this sector. The participants that we plan to recruit are divided in 3 categories. First, international and internal migrants working in the sector. Then local business owners or vendors or employees. And a third category is the representatives of the local food sector governance structures. So we will conduct in-depth interviews with the first category, semi-structured interviews with the second and the third categories of participants. And we're planning also to carry out a narrative cartography, which is a useful tool, as we see it, for analyzing the relationships between migrants and Quito's informal and popular food commerce, since it aims to identify how actors are thinking, narrating, and making sense of the links between migration, food systems, and the urban space. The narrative cartography will involve a group of between 5 and 10 migrants and will be carried out in 4 stages. First, a group discussion focusing on a map of the city, which aims to produce a collective representation of the urban space. A second stage would be a group walk around certain selected places to produce a narrative by, we could say, recognizing those spaces. And third, a final group discussion in which we will re-examine the map, including new mini experiences or memories brought by the walk through certain places in the city. And we will plan to wrap this up with individual in-depth interviews to produce more personal narratives on the previous discussions. So that's the plan. Thank you very much. And I look forward to your questions if you have them. Thanks.
We're going to end the session here and we're going to stop for about 15 minutes. Please join us at 10 o'clock when we continue with the other sessions and presentations. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. We have at least one question for Maria Mercedes, and let me ask Mayor that question if she's back. Thanks, Mayor. So you have a question from Andrea. Andrea is asking, is there much food sold in the markets grown outside of Ecuador? Are the international migrants involved in bringing this over the border? Wondering if there's a larger employment chain connected with these migrants beyond the vendors.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. It's a very interesting question. As far as I know, no, that's not the case. Most of the food sold in markets in Ecuador comes from Ecuador. I'm referring here to traditional markets and street vending. In supermarkets, that's a different story. And interestingly, the food that the migrants in Ecuador consume, the food that's more traditional to them, one could say, is mostly processed food. So, for example, there are specific kinds of flours that Venezuelans or Colombians consume to make their arepas, which is a traditional kind of flatbread that they eat. Is like tortillas for Mexican, a very, very important base of their diet. So they can find that almost anywhere, and beyond that, there's really no need to bring in different specific kinds of food. There is at the borders, there is much more of an exchange of products, but that remains mostly in the border economy, we could say. And also regarding the networks, as far as we know, there are not really networks that like a specific labor niche networks that operate on those labor niche that bring migrants to the country. It's more of a situation in which migrants come, and when they are in the cities, they start looking for any kind of job available. And so the informal food processing or selling is part of those labor opportunities that they find.
Right. And the second question is from Dr. Qazi Farid. He's asking about the theoretical framework you're using. Are you comparing internal and international migrants? How are you selecting migrants and how are you analyzing your data? And I think, let me just add a little question to this is, are you going to look at Venezuelans and Colombians that are the two largest groups? Are you taking one or both or other groups as well?
Yes, so regarding the theoretical framework, we're trying to combine two different bodies of literature. On one side, this conceptual move that I was talking about, that is very important as a trend in Latin America that has been trying to look the concept of informality from a critical perspective and moving to the idea of the popular, the notion of the popular as a category that not only involves people's economic status, but also their identities. And therefore, the popular economies are a specific concept derived from these debates. And we're trying to combine that with studies in the field or in the subfield, should I say, of migration and food security, which have looked at the role of migrants in food systems, and which we find interesting, or what we add from our context to those debates is the fact that we know that in Ecuador, the internal migrants in cities, particularly in the large cities, have been very important in the configuration of the food systems of the cities. So that's why at first we wanted to look at international migrants because our study in Ecuador has been focusing more on international migrants, but given this role that internal migrants play and that even to this day, they are part of the networks of food sellers in markets and in street vending, we are trying to involve or to look at internal migrants too. We're not trying to rigorously compare the two categories, but more to understand what are the difference. So we're not trying to compare migrants, but to understand how do these networks that are formed more, most of all by internal migrants work, and how are these new actors that are international migrants coming into play within these already formed networks. And yes, we will be looking mostly at Venezuelans because they are the majority of migrants in the country right now. But there are also some Colombians that are that came before the Venezuelans, which we will probably encounter. So we're not excluding necessarily excluding migrants by nationality, except that they are coming from the global south. And but what what is likely to happen is that we will find mostly Venezuelans and some Colombians as well.
And a final question, which is from Stella, who finds your approach of using narrative cartography very interesting, and she asks you to just quickly talk about it.
Okay, thank you, Stella, for your question. We are still working on the design of the narrative cartography, but what we're approaching this idea of cartography done within participatory methods. So what we're hoping to achieve from it is to better understand the meanings of the connections between migrants and the spaces they are inhabiting, and this meaning not only residing in the city, in this case in Quito, but also inhabiting their places of work and their places of transit within the city. So this is a very this is a methodology that's very similar. How we're designing it is very similar to other participatory methods based mostly on group discussions, but the difference is that we are basing our discussions on a map. We are creating narratives from the map and complementing that with walking around the city in certain sites and then producing new reflections and new narratives in a collective discussion from the experiences brought by those more direct and more practical immediate relations to the space. So we're going to walk through their certain selected places of work and probably to follow along some transportation routes and visit 1-2 neighborhoods. So we can elaborate on the collective discussion from there.
Thank you so much, Mayor. This is excellent study. I'm really looking forward to hearing you present and write from the research findings later in the year. And please, to all those who are attending, please join us for those presentations and certainly working papers and articles that emerge from this study. I'm going to hand over the chair now to Andrea, and we'll move on to the next session on Africa.
Thanks, Sujata. So we're going to move on to the first of 2 sections on Africa. There's 3 papers in this session. For those of you who are just joining us and those who are here, a reminder to please put your questions in the Q&A or the chat, and a reminder to the presenters that you each have 10 minutes. So we're going to start off with Sam Awar, who's joining us from the University of Nairobi in Kenya, and I'll hand it over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Andrea. And I hope you can see a presentation from the right other side. This is a presentation from Nairobi, Kenya, and within the team, we are trying to look at the impact of COVID-19 on women informal food vendors within the Nairobi's informal settlements. So that our first issue here is, why are we really focusing on the informal settlements? And the argument here is that Nairobi, as the capital city, will continue to absorb a very high percentage of the urban population, basically the internal migrants who are coming from the other parts of the country. And the bulk of that population will always find itself living in the informal settlements, which are characterized by urban poverty issues, which are also characterized by food insecurity, and also a lot of urban informal economy. And we are also arguing that the urban informal food economy is basically now an integral part of the informal economy and also the urban food system, as it serves a very large population, not only those people who are within informal settlements, but also those who are living in other parts of the city. And it is argued that as such, there is need for a greater attention towards these informal urban food systems, and also urban food security issues. During COVID-19, there is a lot which has been done on that. However, we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic affected a number of food supply and distribution chains in various ways and in various dimensions. And therefore, part of the aim of this study is that we are looking at a future pandemics, and there is need to reduce the impact of such pandemics and also improve the resilience of both women and men who are involved in the informal food vending activities. Now, why do we want to focus on women only? We are arguing that women play a very important role as street food vendors, and they supply a variety of food types in various shades, from cooked foods and non-cooked foods, fresh vegetables, and all the other types of foods that are needed by various households. However, the same women face a number of challenges and barriers that more often than not outweigh the opportunities that the same women can get from their food vending enterprises. And we all know that women are also essential contributors, not only to the larger economy, but specifically to the local economies, and contributing to the livelihoods of their families and households. And we are also arguing that besides facing the general challenges, women face specific or what we can call gender specific challenges, such as balancing their household chores and also the societal expectation. And there is need now to empower women as a pathway to local economic growth, poverty reduction issues, and improving food security situation in where they are based. Our research questions, we have 5. Basically, we want to start by setting the motion by looking at the characteristics of the informal food vending enterprises, which are operated by the women, including their food supply chains. And secondly, to find out the opportunities and challenges of the same, which I have also touched on. And thirdly, to investigate the impact of COVID-19 on the food vending enterprises, as well as the households' health and well-being. The 4th objective of our research study will be to determine the coping strategies which were adopted by the women informal food vendors during that period of COVID-19 pandemic. And the overarching aim which will come out now is to assess the governance and gendered dynamics of informal food vending. Now, we are focusing entirely on the informal settlements, and for a spatial coverage, we have chosen 3 sub-counties, largely in the eastern parts of the city. And within those 3 sub-counties, we have chosen 4 informal settlements: Mukuru kwa Njenga, Mukuru kwa Ruben, Viwandani, and Madare. The Embakasi administrative sub-county has got 2 informal settlements, largely because it has the highest percentage of the informal settlements population in the city. I think 28% of the total informal settlements population. And again, the reason why we are focusing on those 4 informal settlements is that our research will collaborate with the society for we call it Muungano wa Wanavijiji, Slum Dwellers International, which is working in the informal settlements, and they are our key partners. And this will provide an entry point for an opportunity for practice, policy uptake, and right, and influence change. Right, our methodological approach will be a mixed method approach whereby we shall deal with the desktop review, right, of literature, basically, right, a synthesis of the relevant literature, right, and existing empirical studies just to get the context and also the relevant policies, right, and governance issues. We will have a quantitative survey of 200 female vendors who will be randomly sampled, 50 in each of the four settlements. And in each settlement, I think there are various villages. So there will be also, right, a need to check on how they will be spread, right, in the various villages. And there will be, because of the gendered right analysis, we will have a comparative control random sample of 52 male vendors, and we shall draw these 52, 13 from each of the regions. Besides that, we shall also have focus group discussions, 4 right in number, and it will be a female-only focus group discussion, 1 in each area of around 10 to 12 participants, drawn from different food vending enterprises. And this will give us further insights on all the aspects of the study, as well as the gendered dynamics which we are talking about. This will be complemented by key informant interviews, and we expect to do 8 of them, basically with the national government officials, the county government officials, the non-state actors, and the professionals, just to also give us a broad overview of the governance dynamics. The team involved in this study, we are 6 of us, and each one of us has a role. There is a PI, there is a co-PI, and we have the collaborators who will do various parts of the study. And we are partnering with not only a project assistant who will be a postgraduate student at the department for training purposes, but we shall also have 20 research assistants who we shall combine both UON students and also the community, also again for training purposes, and our partner SDI, which will be helping us in the coordination of all the project activities in their area of influence. And of course, we shall have the NCC, Nairobi City Council, as our main partner, again, basically the department that is dealing with business and hustler opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sam. I'm really looking forward to seeing the outputs from this research. It's very ambitious, and you're going to have a lot of really rich data, I can see from this already. I'm going to hand the floor over now to Elizabeth Onyango, who's joining us from the University of Alberta.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you all to present on this particular work that we are doing or planning to do in Kenya. Just as an introduction, this particular work is happening in Kenya. So we are looking at a gendered analysis of the role of women-led informal food businesses in urban household food security and well-being of urban dwellers in Kisumu City. So just as a background information, we know very well that global emergencies such as COVID-19 pandemic and inflation has really impacted the general population at large. And we are still experiencing the effects of these particular emergencies. And we are seeing that a lot of, or even some specific groups are uniquely affected in terms of their experiences with their businesses or in terms of their experiences with additional responsibilities. So our focus in this particular work is on small-scale business owners. And in terms of the effects that have been witnessed in relation to these small-scale businesses, during the pandemic, I think most of these business owners could not operate, particularly in the context of the Global South, in the context of the informality that is witnessed within Kisumu. And just as a background too, Kisumu is a secondary city. I know some talked about Nairobi, which is the capital city of Kenya. Kisumu is the third largest city within the Kenyan context. And we find that most of the immigrants who are coming to the city, particularly Kisumu, are coming from the neighboring rural communities. And they still keep those connections that they have with their rural communities. They bring in maybe goods from those communities and sell them in the city, and then remit back again to their rural connections, their village connections, so that there's that kind of a mutual benefit between the villages, the rural communities, and those who are in the city. So in relation to these particular emergencies that you're witnessing, there's a lot of socioeconomic inequalities that have been experienced, particularly on women-owned businesses. And with COVID-19 pandemic, there were added care responsibilities, which also limited people's or women's ability to really support or even continuously do their businesses and continue to support the food needs of urban dwellers. And at the same time, in this context, particularly in the Kenyan context, we see that, or we understand that there are limited support mechanisms in terms of economic support services to allow these unique groups of people to really bounce back to business post-COVID-19 pandemic. And such kinds of experiences really limit their resilience, the resilience of informal food businesses in most cities, particularly those in the global South. For example, in a secondary city like Kisumu. So in spite of their significant role in supporting urban household food security, most of these particular businesses are inadequately supported either by the government or the local initiatives that exist. And when you talk about things like even accessing bank loans or even accessing alternative sources of income to allow these informal women-led businesses to bounce back post a global emergency like COVID-19, and now we are witnessing this inflation. Most of the banks, most of the local initiatives that we have in these places do not really want to take risk in terms of providing support for these groups of individuals. So in Kenya, most of the times you'll find that city spaces navigated by these informal food businesses are quite contested and regulated. And by this, what we mean is that there are regulations, there are all these, the city council coming in and trying to really put in measures or even put in things like taxation that really make these informal food businesses to either go at a loss or experience these spaces quite differently compared to other people. And we know that also public health measures were also put in place during the pandemic, which made it quite hard for businesses, particularly the informal food businesses, to operate during that time of the pandemic. And when we look at literature, a lot of work have been done within the primary cities, the capital city within Nairobi, and a dearth of knowledge exists in secondary cities, for example, within Kisumu City. In Kenya, where the role of women-owned food businesses in urban household food security is not yet clearly understood in the sense of maybe looking at things like their ability to bounce back post a global emergency like COVID-19 or post inflation, and which is still ongoing, and we are all witnessing this. So we are not sure how these particular marginalized groups of people are really managing to bounce back or managing to stay resilient to these kinds of experiences. And then also the experiences of these particular women or these precarious economies of the pandemic, as well as the increased living cost, is not yet clearly understood within Kisumu City. So our project comes in to address this particular knowledge gap, and we focus on three main objectives. So we want to begin by doing a policy document review. So we want to explore the policy environment as it relates to the pandemic and inflation control measures and the effects on women-owned businesses in Kisumu City. And then we also want to examine the role of female vendors in the informal food economy of Kisumu City and in addressing the food security challenges within this secondary city. And thirdly, we also want to analyze the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic disruptions and inflation on food security of female-owned food businesses and challenges of post-pandemic recovery. So for us to be able to really address these particular objectives, we are conducting a cross-sectional study, which is drawing from a community-based mixed methods research. And we are looking at doing policy documents review, and this is mainly to address objective one. So this is where we would be looking at what kind of policies exist within these secondary cities. And we'll look at these both at the city level and then at the national level, and how this particular the city and then the county level. So the Kenyan within the Kenyan context, we have the national government, and then we also have the county government, and within the counties we have the city government as well. So we want to look at these different levels of government and how the policy environment is either supporting or not supporting these groups of individuals, particularly the informal food businesses. And for us to beef up what we have within our policy document review, we'll also be doing key informant interviews to also support some of the things that we are seeing within the policy documents that we'll be looking at. And to address our objective 2 and 3, we plan to conduct a survey. And with the survey, the intention is to focus on women as well as a sample of men. So we hope to sample 250 women who are engaged in informal food businesses, and then 100 men who are also taking part in this particular space. And our main goal here is to see the differences in terms of the women's experiences and the men's experiences in running these kinds of businesses. We'll also be able to do a photo voice. And with a photo voice, we really intend to see how, or even use this particular methodology, which is a participatory kind of a method, where the participants go ahead and take pictures which represent their own experiences in relation to our study topic. So in this case, looking at how they are experiencing inflation, or how I know at this point, maybe we might not be able to have the exact images during the pandemic, but now that we are still experiencing inflation and people are not maybe able to get all that they need to supply within the market. So take pictures of how these kinds of things are really impacting their businesses in general. This particular work is being done in collaboration with local institutions. So within Kenya, we have connections with community-based organizations. So that's Pamoja community-based organization, which is located in Kisumu. And we are also working alongside University of Nairobi, and Assam is part of the research team. We have Maseno University that also works closely with the Pamoja community-based organization. So these institutions would provide that local and contextual kind of a basis for us to be able to really ensure that the information that we are gathering is relevant to the city, is relevant to the county government, as well as the national government. And given the connection that Pamoja Maseno University already has with Kisumu City, I think would be drawing from those kinds of existing support or existing networks. We will also get research ethics approval, both within the Canadian context, so here at the University of Alberta, and then also in Kenya with Maseno University, as well as seeking local authority permission, so through the county government and the national government to conduct our research. Participants would be recruited through the local institutions that we already have. But just to give a basis or just a foundation, looking at Kisumu City in itself, we have 4 to 5 major markets that are in this particular place, and we are targeting this particular market. So we have Nyalenda, Ubunga, some of the informal settlements with some form of informal markets that exist in those particular places. We have Kibuye market, as well as Oyele market that exists within the city. So once we have our data, it's our hope that we'll have this qualitative and quantitative data, and these 2 data sets would be analyzed and would make comparisons to really see how the qualitative data would be informing some of the statistics that we would have from our survey. And we expect that a number of outcomes would come from this particular work. So would generate a policy brief, as well as a project report, some field work reports and data based on the methods that we have. Would conduct a stakeholder workshop, mainly with our local partners, and then also extending this to other relevant stakeholders within Kisumu City. It's our hope that I would also have some peer-reviewed journal articles in open access for people to, for those who are in academia, to also know the kind of work, or even be informed with the work that we'll be doing. And finally, this would be Joyce's MSc research work. So she would be able to write a thesis based on this particular work. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth, and sorry about the connection, Joyce, but hopefully we can bring you in perhaps in the Q&A. A reminder again, if you have questions, please pop those in the Q&A or in the chat. And I'll turn the floor over now to Sherry Enns, who's joining us from the University of Fraser Valley for our final presentation on Kenya.
Good morning, or good afternoon, evening, I guess. Thank you to my colleagues for their very organized and informative presentations. And I look forward to learning and building, hopefully in some way, on what they're already doing. So my work stream 2 also includes SAM, and it focuses on this idea of a seed-to-market food system lab. And the image there, the map, is from the World Food Program, just highlighting not just food insecurity, but malnutrition situation as being very acute within the region currently. So without going into too much, I think for me, always trying to center who I am in the research and working under the leadership of Sam is very appreciated, but also with a community-based South Sudanese, Kenyan refugee organization, NGO, including also a UFE student now graduated, but also from South Sudan. So just always thinking, I guess, of what my space or role can be in this research and drawing on my own experience, having worked in and lived in the region for many decades. Context, research, questions, methodology is what we were asked to do. So just briefly, and I'm not going to go through all the details on the slide, just highlighting again that South Sudanese were the 5th largest population of refugees and over 2.2 million refugees as of 2024. And we know there are many critical, complex crises around the world, but certainly this is one that is really important to focus on. And what's become increasingly interesting is this urban element to the refugee crisis, especially as Kenya has begun to shift its policies. And in that regard, as an urban planner, it's become really fascinating to me about this preferred space for implementing migration policies and the division between national and local policies. So very interested in focusing on that policy space, but the lived realities of one particular group in that space. So building on Workstream 1, where we used graphic recording and youth, urban South Sudanese refugees from Nakuru and Nairobi spoke about interventions and strategies, and the arrow in the corner emphasizes this need for their own training in order to be active within the current food system. We followed this up with meetings with UNHCR and other NGOs and really came up with this idea of a seed to market lab that focuses on the position of youth in addressing challenges and acknowledging, COVID aside, that the new shift in policies as more urban refugees move into Nairobi and Nakuru, specifically youth from South Sudan, that the situation is even more precarious than before, given the pressures on South Sudan, not just from conflict, but the triple nexus, as well as environmental challenges. So our goal in Workstream 2 is to map the food supply chain. We did some of this in the Workstream 1, but not in detail, and to look at opportunities, look at barriers, constraints, and then opportunities that youth might have within that food supply chain. So we're asking what the sources are, and we've included Nakuru. We did by chance in Workstream 1, just because so many of the youth did live in Nakuru. So now we want to be more intentional. We want to look at food variety and back to the nutritional quality, and then what role can urban refugees play in processing, procuring, selling food, etc. Without going into details, the framework I'm using or want to use is implementation research. So, examining our role in this project, as well as involving stakeholders to generate socially robust knowledge needed for sustainable and more just transitions. So we aim to work with 60 participants, which is more or less the number we worked with in Workstream 1. And because all expressed interest, if possible, we'd like to certainly give them the opportunity to be involved again. And we're going to do this using ideation, the lab, a training platform, key informant groups, interviews. But our data set's going to come from existing data in terms of the more checking, if you will, the triangulation with our outcomes and larger data sets. So we're really interested in the lived experiences, but adding in this training platform that's more participatory, where there's some co-creations and innovations related to opportunities to work within the urban food supply chain. So just in conclusion, the goal of this is really rethinking the policy and structure of cities, but as well inclusion of urban refugees in the addressing the challenges through education and training. And in that regard, I guess I'll stop here, but just gives you a brief overview of what we hope to do in Workstream 2. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sherry. This is really, really interesting research. The questions can be put into the chat and Q&A for these three presenters, if there's any out there. Sam, I do have a question for you. I was echoing from one of the questions asked earlier in one of the panels. I'm wondering if you're planning on using some of the data from earlier surveys that you've carried out in these areas in Nairobi. And also I know that SDI is carrying out regular surveys in the areas where they work, and if that earlier data might also come in to inform your research.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea, for that question. What we shall do is maybe, yeah, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, what we shall do is maybe later on we may compare the similar survey which was done before COVID, right? And this one which we will do now, right? Although the geographical context might not necessarily be the same because the earlier survey was a citywide survey, right, covering the entire Nairobi, and now we shall only focus on one segment of the population, which is basically the informal settlements. So some comparisons may come out of later analysis as such. And as you have said, there is a lot of work which is going on within the informal settlements as such. But one of the issues that is really lacking is the art resilience part of it, and how the female food vendors can adopt to any pandemic situation. Thank you. And the governance issues. We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
It's always one person. Sorry about that. We are a little bit short on time. So what I would suggest, since there aren't any other questions in the chat right now, is that we move ahead to the next session on Africa. But if people do have questions that they'd like to pose to these three presenters, maybe we can fold those into the questions from session 4 as well. So I will hand things over to Zach to introduce the next panel.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be able to chair this second session on Africa. Our first speaker is Dr. Sean T. Sithole. He's going to be talking about the urban transformation, African migrants, and the informal food systems in Africa. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sean to present his topic, and then we'll go on from there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. As part of the team at the University of the Western Cape, South Africa, I'll be presenting a proposal on urban transformation, African migrant women, and the informal food system in Cape Town. Classical migrant flows have illustrated that they were male-dominated, particularly in Africa and Southern Africa. And in recent times, there's been ample evidence of the feminization of migration. showing that women now constitute a considerable proportion of the migrant population. Notably, men and women migrants encounter different opportunities and unique risks, vulnerabilities, and problems. For instance, in the informal sector, women are likely to experience more exploitation, abuse, and gender-based inequalities, resulting in distinct contributions to development. This study thus provides a significant new dimension to evolving discussions and literature on the synergies between migration and development. It is also noteworthy that many women not only migrate as dependents, but also independently and are breadwinners, assuming agency for livelihoods. The migrant status of women generally reduces their prospects of working in the informal sector. Therefore, men are compelled to seek opportunities in the informal sector, which is more accessible and cheaper to start a business. And in the context of South Africa, female African migrants earn an income and provide food to their households by working in the informal food sector. And the need for survival means migrant women endure diverse challenges as they navigate various spaces. Significantly, there have been calls for more research on migrant women's survival strategies and agency as an alternative to being attentive to only their vulnerability. Against the above backdrop, this study aims to contribute to the growing literature on the migration food security nexus. The specific aim is to examine how the transformation of food systems generates new forms of migration, precarious migrant women employment, and food insecurity. The specific objectives are to analyze the operations and contribution of migrant women informal food vendors to the urban food systems, evaluate the opportunities and challenges faced by migrant women informal food vendors operating in the informal sector, to examine the gender dynamics migrant informal food vending, to assess the constraints and vulnerabilities of migrant women informal food vendors, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. The research questions include, what is the nature and contribution of migrant women informal food vendors to the urban food systems? What are the opportunities and challenges faced by migrant women informal food vendors operating in the informal sector? What are the gender dynamics of migrant informal food vending? What are the limitations and vulnerabilities of migrant women informal food vendors, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic? Cape Town is one of the popular urban spaces in South Africa for African migrants who migrate to seek employment and economic opportunities. Thus, the study area will be Cape Town, and the specific areas will be Bellevue, Masipimolele, Howard Bay, and Cape Town City Center. Regarding the methodology, the mixed method approach will be utilized through questionnaire surveys using Kobo Toolbox on tablets and in-depth interviews. The sample size will be 250 for the surveys and 20 in-depth interviews. The target population will be migrant women from Zimbabwe, DRC, and Somalia. All ethical protocols will be observed. The proposed outputs include fieldwork report, research report, data set, a MiFOOD paper, and at least one article or book chapters. Other activities include training research assistants, a consultation plan with organizations such as Celebrini, and a dissemination event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sean. Now move on to Bernard, who will be talking about his research, prospective research on the Ghana situation. Welcome, Bernard.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, so this particular project will focus particularly on Ghana in Accra, and I will be analyzing the goat meat and cattle production and sales in the food value chain in Accra. We all know that meat is an important food source, and in recent years has become part of the human diet, and in many parts of the world, it is a staple. It's a staple food and has been part of the diet since prehistorical eras. However, the choice and the consumption pattern is dependent on the individual's economic status and religion. In recent years, we see that goat meat and cattle has been reported as one of the main food sources and contribute to about 1/6 of human diet. And the prediction is that by 2030, there's going to be it's going to double up in terms of the demand as against the supply. If you look at it in nutritional terms, we see its ability to provide for important vitamins, other biominerals, and protein. In Ghana, for example, the ruminant stock, particularly goat, cattle, and sheep, contribute to nutritional security, and this provide important protein, which compensate for the national diet or a local diet, which are basically on cereals and on roots. What's much more, there's production of cattle, sheep, and goats in Ghana and other livestock in Ghana. It is not adequate to feed a growing population, particularly in cities. In peri-urban, if you look at peri-urban centers and urban centers, the production is just 25% of the required needs for the population. As a result, there is a live animal or slaughtered animals are imported to support the growing needs of urban populations in the country at large. And that leads, to some extent, it leads to a long-standing trade between Ghana and Burkina Faso, for example, where we have about 30 to 40% of cattle meat or meat from beef, or that's cattle beef imported from Burkina Faso to Ghana to supplement the nutrition needs of the country. In terms of the consumption patterns, if you look at the consumption patterns in the livestock ruminant production and supply chain, for example, the many studies have been done, particularly in notable cities, and such as the northern region, where much more of cattle production is being done, and close to the northern region or the south, a bit of the southern part to the north, Kumasi, for example, much more studies have been done examining the consumption patterns and the nutritional security. However, if you look at it in the context of the national capital, Accra, very little has been done. Therefore, this particular project, what it seeks to do is to take into consideration, fill the research gap, and take into consideration the market node challenges and involvement of international migrants in Accra in this cattle, meat, and goat business. And together, these will help understand the food value chain and how crucial it is to the national food security programs, as well as identifying growth opportunities within the sector. In the light of this context or this background, the following objectives will guide the study. The first will be to analyze or to assess the spatial and temporal flow of meat and cattle into Accra and Ghana. Then the second will look at the structure of the meat or the city meat supply chain and examine the critical infrastructure in the meat value chain. Then the study will also explore the involvement of West African migrants, for example, in the meat industry in Accra. Then again, we will look at how the migrants construct the activities, the activities and livelihood in the meat industry in Accra. Then the final we'll look at the policies and deficiencies that impede the involvement of the migrants in the meat and cattle or the meat value chain and food production in Accra. In terms of research methodology, this specifically will be qualitative research work, and it will be carried out in Accra in 3 main markets or 3 of the largest markets particularly at Kaneshi, Abobloshi, and the Makala market. That is where most of these livestock ruminants are brought and sold in Accra. And the purposive snowball sampling approach will be adopted to select 30 participants who are international migrants and involved in this business. And the distribution will be 10 each for all the 3 market centers. For the data collection approach, this structured qualitative in-depth interview guide will be used. However, before the in-depth interview guide, there will be something like a casual visit to the government institutes. For example, the livestock production units and veterinary services within the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. And the goal or the main aim is to have kind of a casual interview to understand the basis and of livestock flow and trading and production within the city. On the main interview itself with the migrants involved in the meat, cattle, and sheep business, the data that will be collected will focus on the process of the sourcing, the methods of transportation, the methods of slaughtering and carcass processing, as well as the type of interaction that exists between the different actors and the distribution, taking note of the geographical destination of the meat. Also, because we also want to understand the value chain governance and challenges in the system. Therefore, we will try to identify the roles involved in the decision processes and performance of the activities, what the migrants do and what the other structures in the infrastructure do, and the type of relationship that is between the stakeholders regarding the transaction, the animal and the products, and the kind of how the payments and all those are done. Then we will also assess the views on power groups in the system and existing association. Then to some extent, the next will also look at interactions with government officers and the structures itself. And the final data that we will assess will be on the gender dominance, and we will try to assess which aspect of gender is much more into this business. For the data analysis, it's a qualitative study, and we will use the in vivo 12 software to develop codes then to analyze, and this will be supported with secondary data sources to help analyze the trend that will be obtained from the qualitative data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernard, for this fascinating topic. We're definitely looking forward to not only seeing the results, but also drawing parallels to other meat value chains in the context of sub-Saharan Africa, which I'm also currently engaged. Next, I would like to introduce again Diana, who was not able to join us before. For the Latin America team, we'll give her the opportunity to present her research, prospective research topic, and then we'll come back to the general question and answer session. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm sorry for earlier, the time misunderstanding. It was very early in Mexico. So I'm going to be the rogue Latin Americanist on this team, and I'm going to be quite brief because I'm a little bit sick. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. So I'm presenting on behalf of the Mexico team our proposal for Workstream 2, which is titled The Role of Transit Migrants in Urban Food Systems in 3 Mexican Cities. And just as some sort of background lead up to this proposal, we're starting off with the sort of premise and understanding that historically and all around the world, migrants have played important roles in constructing urban food systems, especially as vendors and often peri-urban producers of perishable goods and of prepared foods, right, in particular. And this has really been true around the world, although in Europe and in the United States, because of high rates of supermarketization and sort of, the hegemony of supermarkets, there's not as much of this, although you have it in certain cities, but in much of the global south, we still see this as being the case. And in some places, like actually Mexico historically, the migrants were regional migrants, not transnational migrants, rural migrants, but transnational migration has certainly also played an important role. And so we have multiple studies coming out of Asia and Africa that some of you kind people have actually produced yourselves, right, that show that migrants play an important role in urban food security and in helping to ensure access to affordable and culturally appropriate foods for low-income populations. We don't have as many studies from Latin America about the role of transnational migration. Indeed, most of the research is more historical in nature and is focused on rural to urban migration. And so there's very, very little, next to nothing, about the role of migrants in food systems in Latin America. So one of the contributions we hope of the study will actually be to draw attention to this population, especially because in Latin America, transnational migrants are a growing population. And in Mexico in particular, since Mexico is one of the most important transit routes to get to the United States, 18% of the global migration flow annually passes through Mexico. And because of the militarization of the border with the United States, more and more of these people are actually staying put in Mexico. So that means that you have a transnational migrant population that's growing from year to year. And so some questions emerge from that. And they're settling in urban areas primarily. They're passing through rural areas as well. But our study is going to be focused on then these migrants who are sort of on the move in transit, so not necessarily settled long-term in a city. But again, the idea of being in transit is quite a broad category. It can encompass people who are somewhere for just a few days, or some people who are for years sort of stuck in a limbo. And that's a reality for, thousands of migrants. So the sort of broader question then is, what is the role of transit migrants in food systems in urban and rural areas? And we want to sort of approach this question through two theoretical lenses. First, on the one hand, we're interested in thinking about how gendered labor plays out in migration, and asking how it is that migrants seek work when they're on the move, because one of the sort of elements of transit migration that's often overlooked is that when people are in transit, they're not just commuting. They often have to stop, recover funds, recover health, and they often need to seek employment. So employment is actually an important part of the migratory process. How are migrants seeking work? How are women seeking work in particular? What is their role in food systems? We have reasons to think from preliminary research and from some of what we learned in the Workstream 1 research that food markets and sort of small-scale food, informal food vending are actually important opportunities for migrants who are in transit. So we want to build on that and understand the gender dynamics of the transit migration labor market and the role of the food system in that. And then the second thing that we're interested in thinking about is the idea of sort of putting forth this idea of migrant food systems, transit migration food systems, or transit migration foodscapes, but basically to try to get a sense of what are the particularities of the migrant food system as opposed to the general urban food system. So we know the urban food systems are comprised of various types of sites, locations, actors. When migrants come, and this is sort of one of the hypotheses, let's say, when migrants come to urban areas, they don't just in an undifferentiated manner necessarily, insert themselves as consumers or workers into these food systems. So we're interested in what are the sort of specificities, how are they actually constituting these systems in their own way? And we're asking then, so where do migrants feed themselves and each other, and how do they feed themselves and each other? So sort of both of these lenses are aiming to get to thinking about migrant food systems as spaces of both labor and consumption. I'm learning more about those. Okay, so here you have the general objective of the study, which is to analyze the role played by migrants from any country of origin in the Mexican urban food systems in a contemporary period marked by indefinite and precarious periods of transit where migrants find themselves in need of work and food. And so we've selected for the study 3 cities that we're going to focus on. Tapachula, which is on the southern border of Mexico City, and oh, for some reason, this map doesn't have cities. Well, okay, Tapachula is on the northern border with the United States. And it's a small city of about 260,000. Mexico City is in the south central part of the country, 22 million. And then Tapachula is on the southern border with Guatemala, and it has about 365 million. So we chose these cities because they're all on the main sort of migrant trail, right, from Central America to the United States. They're really important nodes. We wanted to get a sense of the differences both in the southern and the northern borders, which are sort of key cluster areas, and then Mexico City, which is increasingly a migrant city. So these are the research questions that are guiding us as we start. How do migrants in each of these locations seek employment and feed themselves? What roles do other migrants play in helping them access food, including commercial transactions, gifts, sharing? What sites in the urban food system provide employment opportunities, and what are these mechanisms through which insertion in these spaces is achieved? And how does gender shape the insertion and opportunities to participate in food-based employment, right? So these are sort of our broad questions that relate to those two sort of theoretical lenses that we started with. And then finally, just very briefly, are the research methods that we're going to be working on. We're going to be doing an entirely qualitative study, both for reasons, I mean, in part, I'm an anthropologist, and that's just what I feel comfortable with in terms of formulating, questions and interpreting research. But also, we felt that as a result of our Workstream 1 research, it was actually quite difficult to do large sort of quantitative survey-based research with these populations because they're quite spread out in the city, they're sort of difficult to locate, and even for ethical reasons, we felt more comfortable working more directly with the populations we're going to be working with. So we're proposing 45 in-depth ethnographic interviews, so 15 in each city, and then doing direct observations and participant observation in parts of the city where migrants have told us or are known to be involved in the food systems. This could include public markets, street vendors, wholesale markets, shelters, and other locations, garbage dumps, etc. So we're looking at these to sort of get a sense in terms of mapping, quite literally, like where is this? Where's the migrant urban food system? Where is it located? How does it work? And to get a sense of how people, use it as both consumers and also as workers. And then the final thing is actually a question for the timeline, because we had sort of originally proposed a timeline that thought we were going to start a while back, but I don't know what the situation is in terms of when we're all going to be able to start with Workstream 2. So I'm going to just end with that question because we're eager to get started with this, and I will stop sharing. And that's all. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dan. I feel like, as you said, it's quite familiar to the migrants in transit within the African context as well, especially as they are moving from one place to another, and the concept of timeline is also very, very relevant. I'm glad that actually you guys got switched to the African session, because it kind of gives us the comparatives or differential analysis. So we're going to move to questions and answer sessions. I'll actually start with Tana because yours is the most recent. So I'm just curious, like, what led to the selection of the 3 specific Mexican cities for the studies, and how do you plan to approach a comparative analysis of transit migrants' role in each of the cities' urban system?
So we chose, Mexico City because we're all based here and it's the capital, and there is very little research on migrants in Mexico City to this date, and let alone in terms of food. And then the sort of southern and northern cities, Tapachula we chose because it's the most important city in the south in terms of migration. Has a really, just enormous migrant population. And Nogales in the north we actually chose because it's a bit smaller, so it's not one of the most important cities. but we have certain contacts there, and because the northern border is really hyper saturated with researchers and NGO people and whatever, it's important to have contacts. So we don't actually know exactly what the sort of what will come out of the comparative analysis. I don't actually know if it's going to be comparative per se in a sort of, standard sense. Just I mean, we're going to be looking at the experiences in these different cities and hoping to try to make some generalizations across the board, and also see what varies in terms of the different regions and the city size. But we're going to be pretty inductive about it and see what comes out of it.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there's also a couple of questions for you in the chat, but I'll let you answer those ones or respond to them in the chat because of the time constraint. Actually have a one or more or less similar question for Dr. Sean, because Dr. Sean, I'm currently actually engaged in a similar research focusing on the Somali migrants in Nairobi and their role in the urban food system, which kind of present a fascinating parallel to your work in Cape Town. So considering the shared themes and urban transformation, I'm actually curious about opportunities for cross-regional learning. But however, in the context of Workstream 2, my question to you is, how does your proposed research into Cape Town's informal food system address the integration or exclusion of migrants population in this urban transformation?
Thank you. So I think recent research has shown how migrants are being excluded and also facing challenges such as xenophobia. And because our study is also going to focus on COVID-19, there are also challenges which informal food vendors face during COVID and still suffer from other challenges post-COVID. And we thought also by looking at women, they also have their own unique challenges, in a lot of inequalities connected to women. So we thought maybe we should focus specifically on women. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think similar to Diana said, it's a lot of other fascinating questions for you in the chat, especially by Farid about your theoretical framework and others. One question that I have for Bernard is also what specific policy recommendation or practices do you hope your research will inform? Because it's a unique research in the sense that it's about meat value chain, and it's usually highly regulated, especially within the public health sector, especially after the COVID-19. So how do you hope your research will inform policy recommendation in line with Workstream 2's goals of enhancing the role of migrants in the urban food system?
Thanks for the question, Zach. Yeah, of course, the ultimate goal is to enhance food production, right, and food availability for the urban population, right? And to the best of my knowledge, most international migrants involved in this kind of business required a kind of license as international migrants to operate in this kind of business, right? So I'm thinking engaging in this particular topic, for example, or this proposed project will open up opportunities for us to examine the opportunities, much more emphasis on the opportunities within this kind of business, again, to enhance what food production or meat production to the urban population or the growing urban population, because the population in Accra continues to increase every year. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Bernard. And I think that brings us to the close of our session, and to actually close of the program as in general. It has been fascinating listening to all of the researchers, and hopefully similar to Workstream 1, I'm looking forward to what Workstream 2 will bring forth. Some really interesting topic, and we hope that we build on what we've done so far in Workstream 1. And with that, I think we can close the sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you all the speakers for this fascinating panel. I know it's challenging to stay in front of the screen for 3 hours, and thank you so much for staying with us until now. Now let me invite Professor Mulugeta Timbapo from the University of the Western Cape in South Africa to give us the closing remarks. Mulu, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon across the globe. First of all, dear panelists, dear participants, it gives me a great pleasure to address this closing session. Allow me first to convey special thanks and appreciation to the principal investigator of this project, Professor Jonathan Crash, organizers of MiFOOD Workstream 2 at Balsale School of International Affairs, Jean-Jacques, Maria, and all your team members, all project team members. I thank all the participants who have attended today's workshop, raised very important, pertinent questions, and shared experience on enhancing urban food in the global South. I would also like to congratulate all of you for your dedication, participation, and active engagement in the learning experience of this project. Today's workshop covered a wide range of topics from the key steps involved in projects from India, Canada, China, Mexico, Kenya, South Africa, and Ghana. Very interesting. We also understand that today's workshop showed us a wide variety of case studies, examples to illustrate the key points in urban food in the global South. We know that the learning experience in this workshop stressed the crucial role of urban food in the global South. Dear participants, dear panelists, let me finish by saying that you all have worked hard, but in fact, the real work only starts now. This is the beginning of our concerted efforts to work together with our partners across the globe. Of course, as a researcher, as an academician, we are also keen to publish the research findings, not only publishing and disseminate the result both in the academic and policy environment. Again, later in the year, until the end of this year, we also plan to organize another workshops. We hope to continue collaborating with our partners across the globe. In concluding my remarks, I would like to thank all of you once again for your engagement, dedication, participation. Let me end by assuring you that the South African team, especially the senior management of the University of Western Cape, where I'm based, will continue to support this project and are ready to collaborate with any kinds of project activities in the field of migration studies, human mobilities. We look forward to continue working closely with you to advance the implementation of this interesting project, the MiFOOD project. Thank you all. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mulu. That is wonderful. So before we conclude today's workshop, I would like to make announcement of the upcoming MiFOOD webinar featuring Professor Mustafa Koch from Toronto Metropolitan University. This webinar will be on March 26th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you are all welcome to join the webinar and the discussion. Now I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the speakers and their invaluable contributions, and also congratulate them on the advancement of research. And of course, I want to express our sincere appreciation to our dedicated team, support team at Balsale School, including Maria Salamoni, Larissa Varela and Joanne Weston for their efforts in ensuring the success of this workshop. And I wish each of you a fruitful journey ahead in your research. I believe we will see each other again shortly, and thank you all and goodbye.